This video is going to talk about the primary inputs and secondary inputs, as well as the primary outputs and secondary outputs of a complex machine. We remember from last year that all machines need some sort of input. Whether you're pressing a button or you're turning a handle or you're sliding something into place to get the machine to actually do what it's supposed to do. This causes the mechanisms, the different types of simple machines inside the actual machine, to accomplish their task, to create an actual output. And when we talk about inputs and outputs, we have to include not only the materials that are required by a machine to get it to work, but we also have to look at the different types of energy transformations that are occurring here. So we're going to start off looking at what kind of inputs, primary and secondary, a machine tends to need. So when we're talking about primary inputs, the primary input, so primary means the first thing that any machine needs in order for it to work is some kind of material substance. In the case of the apple peeler that you see here, the apple peeler needs what in order for it to actually work? It's designed to do what? It's designed to peel apples. So in order for the actual object to work, the primary input needs to be present. That's to say, we need an apple. An apple needs to be present on the actual peeler in order for the peeler to work. So primary inputs are always a material, okay? A material that is needed in order to get the machine to work. Just like the primary input is an object, the secondary input is always going to be the type of force or energy, I should say, that needs to be input into the machine in order for it to work. So if we look at this apple peeler, what has to happen here? What kind of energy has to be input into the machine in order for it to actually start peeling apples? We need to turn the handle. And anytime you're applying a muscular energy, or an energy of movement, that is kinetic energy. So the primary input here is the apple, and the secondary input is the type of energy needed to work the machine, and that is kinetic. So now that we know what we need to get the machine working, let's talk about the different types of outputs that we are going to have, starting with our primary output. So in this case, and in any case, anytime you have a material primary input, so an object, the primary output is going to be that modified object. So in this case, the modified object is the apple. How is the apple changed after we've used it, or after we've used the machine on it? And that's to say that the apple is peeled. So the primary output is the actual modified material. Now, we know that when we use this apple peeler, we can see in the image that not only is the primary output a material one, and it's the peeled apple, but a peel is also produced. So when we look at secondary outputs, a secondary output will also include any additional material created. So in this case, the primary output is the peeled apple. The secondary output is the peeling itself, because that's not actually why we use this apple peeler. We use it to peel actual apples, to bake with, to eat, to whatever. The peeling a lot of times gets composted, thrown out, or eaten on the side. In addition to any material output, we have any energy transformation that's occurred. So in the case of this actual apple peeler, we have primary input being the apple, secondary input being kinetic muscular energy. This is needed in order to get the apple peeler to work. Then, as the apple peeler works, we get our primary output being the peeled apple. Secondary outputs, notice there's an S there. That's because there's always more than one output. Okay, secondary output. So first thing, the material is the added peel, the apple peel. Now we start to talk about energy transformations. If I input muscular energy into this, I'm going to actually cause all of the gears to start this chain reaction because they are a gear train, and that is going to cause more kinetic movement. Okay, my turning the handle is going to cause all of these gears to turn, which is going to not only cause the blade to turn, okay, the little blade here is going to go around and around, it's also going to cause the mounting system, the one this is the system that the actual apple is kind of stuck into with the prongs, and that's going to turn as well. So my outputs here are going to be another form of kinetic energy. Anytime I've got two actual parts that are touching, I am creating friction. So friction is a form of thermal energy. And you can see that by rubbing your hands together very quickly. Your hands get warm because you're creating thermal energy. And then the last type that's usually, formed in an output, in a secondary output, is acoustic energy. And that is the energy of sound. We are actually going to hear the apple peel being peeled off the apple. So in this case, you've got one primary input, one secondary input, you've got one primary output, and you've got 4 secondary outputs. The peel, kinetic movement energy, thermal energy, and acoustic energy. So this is how we talk about primary inputs, secondary inputs, primary outputs, and secondary outputs of any complex machine.